What is it about an MMORPG that makes it feel immersive? Is it the weather? Is it things that pull you into the game itself? Is it the lore and the story and how it may or may not be presented? That's what we're going to be talking about today with Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen, an MMORPG in development by Visionary Realms that is currently in pre-alpha that I have covered several times on this channel. But in this video, we're going to be talking about whether or not I believe that this game will be immersive. Spoilers, I do. It's not really shocking that I do, but we're going to talk about what parts of the game I specifically think will make it an immersive experience for players. And we'll start in my favorite place: lore and story. What it is that makes a game immersive will be different for many people. It could be things like weather, it could be the world itself, or it could be things like lore and story. But the way that that's delivered, especially lore and story, is pretty critical. And that's what we're going to talk about, and how and what Pantheon is doing that's a little bit different. Starting with lore and story was kind of a no-brainer for me. I mean, hell, I write books. And honestly, part of how EverQuest hooked me so well as a kid was the Pantheon of gods and the information they had on them and how it kind of played into Greek mythology. I mean, learning about Khazak Thul, Bristlebane, Inaruk, and Solus Grow, who wouldn't be intrigued to learn more? Lots of people, actually. A whole lot of people that just want to play the game. But perhaps that was also because the way that the lore was delivered, the way that the story was delivered, was not as easily accessible as it could have been. There has to be a way to immerse yourself in the world without walls of text. Because yes, you are going to have players like myself who would print out the lore from the website, take it to school and read it. But you're also going to have players that just want to get on with the very next thing and don't want to bother with this long text. So what is Pantheon's answer to that? The perception system. The perception system is, I think, one of the things in Pantheon that is very special and unique. It has been shown off a few times. It's a simple but intriguing mechanic that essentially provides quest text in a way that immerses you, not unlike Elder Scrolls Skyrim and the way that their NPCs and quest NPCs would come up to you or wave to you or yell to you, basically engaging you in the quest. In this instance, it is the world itself that is talking to you, allowing for an ease of entry into lore, quests, and story. It plays into what has become a clear focus of Pantheon, that the environment itself matters. It's a system designed to bring you along into exploration, to make you interested in the world. Little hints to encourage you to investigate further, should you wish to and should you have the skill to. The perception system has been part of Pantheon for years. It is distinct from the questing system, where the basic quests are available to everyone, but the perception system has certain things that are not, and they may be tied to the race you pick, they may be tied to your skill in perception, but it's not just full-on quests either. Sometimes it may be lore tidbits, it may be additional information about the world, it may be showing you different things. In this and in the system, I think Pantheon has a wide gamut of what they can do with it. They can guide you to all kinds of things, and it'll be up to the developers to decide what and how they want to utilize this system, but it's more powerful than it may seem on the surface. It could lead to tangible rewards like items, or it could also lead you to information on perhaps how to defeat a boss, or get through a dungeon a little easier, or to find different ways and things to do within the world. It could lead you to other quests. It could teach you about the world itself. There is a lot that can be done this way with essentially what feels a little bit like breadcrumbs. And we've also been told that it could be impacted by the next immersive element of the game. Weather, climates, and fractures all breathe life into the world of Pantheon. Day-night cycles and weather have been in games for ages, But with new technology, we're starting to see games harness these in ways that bring the world more to life than ever before. While many of us who played games like EverQuest remember just how deadly some zones got at night, and if you played, you know exactly what zone I am talking about. But Pantheon is promising to add that and more with their systems. We'll start with weather. Weather right now looks like it's going to be localized in Pantheon, with storms, fog, etc. The impact of weather is something I haven't gotten a full handle on yet, besides the environmental immersion it provides. When the weather system was first revealed, it dramatically transformed a zone, and this alone is something that can make a world feel alive with the proper use of sounds and visuals. But perhaps you could add to it by having different NPCs react to storms or fog in different ways. You could have different things spawn specifically when a weather event is happening. And you could also have this impact different things like your ability to harvest, or perhaps there are certain things that are only harvestable during different weather events. It'll be up to, again, Pantheon to decide how they want to do this, but at least they seem open to it when they talked about how the weather system might work. But there is a more active version of weather. Climates. Climates have been described as an extreme environment that will inflict detrimental effects on unprepared players. There are currently 6 climate types: frigid, scorching, toxic, anaerobic, pressure, and wind shear. Different climates can exist together. For example, pressure and anaerobic make sense in deep water, as does wind shear and frigid at high altitudes. For each climate, there are 5 tiers of potency, with core and sporadic detriments that they can inflict. These can cause damage to players, they can slow them, they can snare them, drain endurance, etc. Essentially, they cause bad things, but players can actively combat them with glyphs, innate acclimation from their race, or by learning acclimation through exposure. Now, I personally wouldn't go somewhere like this to become more accustomed to cold weather. That could potentially end up very, very badly. But it's still a game. We can only get so immersive, right? But hey, that's one way that you might be able to handle a place like this a little bit better. Just stick around in the cold a little while. But there is a less natural cousin to climates, and that is fractures. Fractures are unnatural metaphysical events that can emanate out from a specific area or object. These can be both static and spontaneous. So you could be traveling to your favorite experience spot and happen upon a fracture you weren't expecting, adding some extra danger and life to the world. Some of the fractures players may encounter include silencing mists, fog of confusion, gloom, frenetic floor, curse of intangibility, heavy air, and shifting walls. And apart from continuing the long-lasting tradition here of searching through the thesaurus for anything we can use in an MMO, these different fractures sound interesting. Seriously though, what does frenetic mean? Is it like, I need to look that up. Oh, that's what it means. Like climates, these provide specific bonuses and negatives. The gloom fracture, for example, provides reduced healing effectiveness and mana drain over time. To undead, it also provides a bonus to all stats and increased aggro and assist radius. As a fan of the necromancer class, that immediately got me thinking of how something like this could be actually utilized to benefit players instead of hurt them. It conjured thoughts of the Death Knight in World of Warcraft, who for a time could use the Lichborn skill to turn a damaging skill into a self-healing skill, because Lichborn made them undead. What all of this has in common is ways to make the world both predictable and unpredictable, and create conscious decision-making on how best to utilize or minimize the struggles encountered with the world itself. When the world becomes both an enemy and ally, it means every part of it becomes more important to you. It is more beneficial for you to pay attention to the world itself, instead of whatever you're watching on Netflix or YouTube on your second monitor. Unless it's me, you can totally put me on your second monitor. I am completely fine with that. To me, this is just another way to pull the player into the world, especially when the world is open. Pantheon is talking now about an open and seamless world that you can explore at your whims. I considered actually leaving this part out of the video because to me, a seamless world has never been necessary for immersion, but I couldn't really talk about exploration and climbing without touching on the shift to to a seamless world in Pantheon that we learned about last year. So no zones, essentially, or very few of them. Exploration open worlds aren't exactly new to MMOs, even climbing has been done before. But the climbing that I remember was in games like EverQuest 2, and it launched with their second expansion, but that was very specific climbing. It was, you knew exactly where you were going to be climbing, really, before you got to it. It was clearly defined visually, and honestly, it wasn't like adding in exploration, it was more just adding a different way to go about different places. It did make the world more three-dimensional because you no longer were just settled on the ground and having to go up hills to get to places, but you could kind of traverse more vertically. But it was still very limited, and that is not what it seems like it's going to be with Pantheon. Pantheon will be using a mechanic that drains your endurance as you climb, not unlike games like Breath of the Wild. It adds a sense of fear to some climbs, as you may be climbing too long or too far, and potentially get to a point where you might be stuck. I do not know if you will continue to lose endurance while sitting still on a wall, but it is something that if you do, you might be stuck, which could actually lead into a very different thing that we'll get to at the end of this video. From what I've seen with climbing in Pantheon and the way it's been described, I expect some climbing paths to lead to absolutely nothing. And I think that is a great thing to have. You could have climbing paths that will lead you to alternative ways to go about things, or you could have a climbing path that leads you to nothing. Just a kind of, in a sense, waste of your time, or at least your endurance. And those I think are very important things to have, because it encourages you to explore and being able to kind of miss out on something if you don't look. It makes you more aware of the world. Well, okay, I could see this, you can climb up here, but is there something up there that I want to go see? Is there the possibility of something? Does it look like it? It's kind of what makes some open world games really interesting and intriguing. Think about games like Elden Ring or The Witcher 3 and how and why you would want to go places. It wasn't that you were guaranteed that there's going to be something there. It was more this idea that maybe there is. And that's not to talk about how climbing could be impacted by the aforementioned fractures, climates, and perception system. I mean, just imagine you get a perception ping telling you that there's something nearby, a little hint that really intrigues you. You look up and you see this massive, massive mountain above you. But to go up that mountain, you have to combat with wind shear and frigid. And you don't think you could do it right now. So you have to think of, is it worth it? You have to think, well, how am I going to go about doing this? What kind of glyphs do I need to get? How can I make this work? And it could all be because you took a right instead of a left. These are just some of the systems in place that I think will make Pantheon a game that is easy to lose yourself in, to be immersed in. MMORPGs and RPGs aren't the only games to do this, but for me, they're the ones that tend to do it best because they're the ones where it is honestly most important. Because while an RPG can rely heavily on single player story or on character development or combat and things like that, an MMORPG isn't asking you to invest even more time than some of those long lasting RPGs. It really needs you to feel like you are part of the world in order to really stick around for the long haul. Which, as we have MMORPGs that are over 20 years old now, that long haul can be very long. But there is one part of Pantheon Immersion that I didn't cover in this video. If you want to check it out, I have it in this video right here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.